Welcome to the podcast. I'm William,
And this is Kat,
and together that makes this Info on the Go.
answering questions you want to know.
So, this is going to be really part one of a two-part series, and we're going to do insulins and we're going to talk about insulins. Then we're going to into the second part of it, GLP-1 drugs that you've been hearing a lot about in the news. But let's get back to insulin. So it was a single discovery in 1921 that saved millions of lives. Yet today, insulin remains out of reach for many. The story of insulin, science, struggle, and survival, that's really what we're going to be talking about today.
Absolutely. What is insulin and why it matters? Regulates blood sugar, it's critical for diabetes management. But, diabetes is a global epidemic, and access to insulin is a matter of life and death.
So, ancient references of sweet urine or wasting disease, it started in around ancient Egypt, circa around 1500 BCE. And it was the earliest recorded references of diabetes-like symptoms. Egyptian medical papyri described patients with excessive urine and then progressive emaciation or wasting of the body. And the condition was recognized as serious and it was often fatal.
So, Ayurvedic physicians Sashruta and Chakra identified a disorder called Mahumeda, meaning honey urine. Their observations were that the urine was sweet in taste and smell. So they were tasting urine?
As soon as you said urine that was sweet to taste and smell, yeah, I'm kind of like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not laughing about that, but I'm thinking you're right. Are they just going around drinking other people's urine and going, "Oh, dude, this one's sweet. Oh, you got wasting disease. Sorry." Yeah, I mean, I guess that's how they could tell early signs. You got to think ancient peoples did things we don't really understand.
That's true. That's true. You work with what you know. So urine that attracted ants and insects, a telltale sign of sugar content. So maybe they weren't tasting it. They were just waiting on the ants to come get it.
Maybe.
So they associated the disease with excessive consumption of rich foods and sedentary lifestyle in adult onset cases, genetic or constitutional factors in juvenile cases.
So in ancient Greece, around the second century CE, Atreus of Cappadocia coined the term diabetes, meaning pass through, describing how fluids seem to flow through the body unabsorbed. Wow. So the name diabetes has been around since ancient Greece. Think about that.
The
And
second century.
yeah, he documented key symptoms, intense thirst and frequent urination, rapid weight loss and physical wasting, a disease that melts down the flesh and limbs into urine. I guess it would be half right, maybe.
Maybe,
Yeah,
kind of. Well, observation without true understanding. Okay. So for centuries, physicians recognized the symptoms, but not the underlying cause. And commonly noted signs included, like William said, excessive thirst, frequent urination, fatigue, and weight loss. Um, but the concept of insulin, blood sugar, and pancreatic function remained unknown until the 19th to 20th centuries.
ancient medicine focused on symptom management and really not the cure for the biological mechanism that was still a mystery at the time. But
Right.
as we roll into the 19th century, medical advances, physicians began to kind of recognize different forms of diabetes based on how the disease appeared and progressed in patients. And this really marked the first step toward understanding diabetes as more than one single disorder.
You have juvenile onset diabetes, which is now called type 1, and it typically affected children and young adults, characterized by a sudden and severe onset of symptoms. Rapid physical decline, patients became weak and emaciated within weeks or months, and often fatal before the discovery of insulin, as the body could not regulate blood sugar at all.
Yeah, then you have adult onset diabetes, which is now called type 2. And this developed gradually, usually in middle-aged or older adults. And it was commonly associated with obesity, diet, and sedentary lifestyle. Patients often survived for years with careful dietary control. The disease was considered less immediately severe, though still chronic and debilitating.
But let's kind of dive into understanding sugar metabolism here. So, scientists identified that diabetes involved a failure of the body to properly utilize glucose or sugar. And blood and urine tests revealed elevated sugar levels, confirming the metabolic nature of the disease. And so the link between sugar metabolism and internal organ function became a major focus of study.
Yeah, then you have the role of the pancreas. This was a landmark in animal experiments, and it showed that removing the pancreas in dogs caused symptoms identical to diabetes. These findings pointed to the pancreas as essential in regulating blood sugar. This kind of set the stage for later discovery of insulin in the 20th century.
So let's see the race to discover insulin with Frederick Banting and Charles Best in 1921 at the University of Toronto. So, Frederick Banting, a young surgeon, had a bold idea: ligate the pancreatic ducts in dogs to isolate the internal secretion of the pancreas, later known as insulin. And then Charles Best was a medical student, assisted with the experiments in McLeod's lab at the University of Toronto. So, who is McLeod?
So John Meekleod, he was a professor at the University of Toronto and provided lab space guidance and crucial scientific credibility.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so they all kind of successfully extracted a pancreatic substance that lowered blood sugar in diabetic dogs. James Caleb, a biochemist, refined the extract to make it safe and potent for human use. But the teamwork combined surgical ingenuity, lab chemistry, and clinical insight, a rare convergence that propelled insulin from idea to, well, the life-saving therapy that it would later become.
The first human trials with Leonard Thompson. Leonard Thompson, a 14-year-old boy dying of type 1 diabetes, became the first patient to receive insulin in January of 1922. And the first injection did cause an allergic reaction due to impurities, but after Collip's purification, subsequent injections dramatically lowered Leonard's blood sugar and improved his health. So, this event really marked a turning point in medicine. A previously fatal disease could now be managed.
Just think of the huge impact that it had on Leonard's life.
If I'm not mistaken, there's footage rolling around the interwebs, whether it's real or not, I couldn't tell you. But
Yeah, nowadays it's hard to tell. AI has everything, just whatever.
right. But in any case, there's it's a video of a hospital with a whole bunch of sick kids in bed, and as soon as they started giving the first dose, by the time they got halfway through these kids, the first one started waking up because at this point they were in diabetic comas.
Wow.
Yeah,
And that kind of leads into why it was called the miracle of the 1920s, right?
right.
So news of insulin spread rapidly. Newspapers called it a miracle cure. Children who would have otherwise died could now survive and live full lives. Insulin became one of the first life-saving hormone therapies, paving the way for endocrinology as a field and inspiring future hormone-based treatments. Insulin was the first hormone that was used to successfully treat a disease, making it not just a medical breakthrough, but a landmark in modern science and pharmaceutical development.
And before we get into how insulin works, let's give a brief overview of how it's made. So the early methods was animal-derived insulin. It was extracted from cows or pigs' pancreases, and the pancreas tissue was processed to isolate insulin. And it was used for decades, but sometimes it caused allergic reactions due to slight differences from human insulin.
So then you have the recombinant DNA or synthetic human insulin in 1978. And scientists first identified and isolate the gene responsible for producing human insulin. the DNA sequence that codes for the insulin protein. This human insulin gene is then inserted into a plasmid, a small circular piece of DNA that bacteria, E. coli, or yeast naturally carry. The process uses recombinant DNA technology. Scientists cut open the plasmid with the restriction enzymes and splice in the insulin gene using DNA ligase. So the modified plasmid, now carrying the human insulin gene, is introduced into E. coli or yeast cells through a process called transformation. Once inside, the host organism treats the human gene as its own, reading the instructions to make, well, human insulin.
Bacteria or yeast act as tiny factories producing insulin identical to human insulin. So these engineered microbes replicate rapidly, and every new generation carries the inserted human insulin gene. These cells' internal machinery begins to transcribe and translate the human gene, producing insulin protein molecules. In E. coli systems, insulin is produced in separate A and B chains that must later be chemically joined to form functional insulin. In yeast systems, the process is more advanced. Yeast cells can secrete fully formed biologically active insulin, simplifying purification. And because the genetic code is universal, the insulin produced is structurally and functionally identical to insulin made by the human pancreas.
Yeah, so basically, to just kind of wrap that all up, these enzymes are inserted into the human body. The human body says, hey, we need to make more of this. So they create a factory and they start making it, whether it's yeast or bacteria.
Right.
Yeah, basically. I know that's the dumbed down version of it. Insulin is purified, tested for safety, potency, then packaged for medical use. Once enough insulin is produced, the bacterial or yeast cells are harvested and broken open to release the insulin protein. The mixture undergoes several purification steps um, to remove cell debris, DNA, and other impurities. Then the purified insulin is then chemically folded and stabilized, ensuring it takes the correct three-dimensional shape required for biological activity.
And rigorous quality control tests verify purity, potency, and safety. So it's free from contaminants, biological activity matches human insulin, and no harmful byproducts or immune reactions. And so finally, the insulin is formulated into injectable solutions or other delivery systems packaged and distributed for medical use.
Modern insulin development, there's advances in biotechnology that led to the creation of insulin analogs, and these are designed to better mimic the body's natural insulin release.
And these insulins are genetically modified versions of human insulin, and it's optimized for timing and effectiveness.
Yeah, and then just to kind of break down the analog insulins, you have rapid acting analogs. This begins working within minutes, ideal for mealtime glucose control.
And then long acting analogs, which provide a steady 24-hour effect to maintain baseline insulin levels.
Then you have the intermediate and ultra long acting forms, and they offer flexible dosing and reduce the risk of low blood sugar.
And that's designed for more predictable absorption and action, reducing fluctuations in blood glucose levels. Recombinant production. Produced by the recombinant DNA technology, similar to human insulin, but engineered at a molecular level for specific characteristics. And this allows for precise glucose management tailored to individual patient needs.
And then you have the advanced delivery systems. And these are insulin pens. They're convenient, portable devices for easy and accurate dosing. Then you have insulin pumps. They deliver continuous insulin through a catheter, closely mimicking natural pancreatic function.
Artificial pancreas systems combine continuous glucose monitoring with automated insulin delivery, adjusting doses in real time. And these innovations aim to improve quality of life and reduce complications for people with diabetes.
Yeah, then you have the purification process. So, modern manufacturing includes multiple purification steps. This is really to ensure insulin is free from contaminants, bacteria, and residual from the proteins.
And advanced filtration and chromatography techniques guarantee high purity and safety for human use.
Each bacteria is tested for potency, sterility, and stability before approval. I, you know, I wonder how they test that. Like, I know there's a process that they use, but I mean, at least you know the product that you're getting when you get it. It's the same, you know.
Right, right. And then you have packaging and storage. Insulin is packaged in sterile vials, pre-filled pens, or cartridges for convenient dosing. And products are kept refrigerated to maintain stability and effectiveness during storage and transport. So clear labeling ensures traceability and dosage accuracy across global markets.
Yeah, and the distribution network, insulin is distributed through controlled temperature regulated systems to pharmacies, hospitals, clinics. Then the logistics include cold chain management. This is to prevent degradation from heat or freezing, which is why you have to keep your insulin in the refrigerator. And then you have global coordination, which ensures consistent access for patients across regions. Well, that's really debatable, and we're going to get into that a little bit later.
So, the fun fact here is modern insulin is produced using biotechnology or recombinant DNA methods rather than animal pancreases. And this process makes it safer, purer, and far more scalable than early animal derived insulins. But the result is a consistent quality, reliable dosing, and reduced allergic reactions benefiting millions worldwide.
And before we really get into how insulins work, what do you say we take a small break?
Sounds good to me.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Looking for your favorite band, team, or TV show, maybe that movie? Since 1969, Old Glory has been the ultimate destination for officially licensed merchandise, with over 300,000 items in music, sports, movies, TVs, and popular culture. And you have Christmas coming up. Have that hard to find person that you're looking for? Check out Old Glory. At checkout, use our exclusive listener discount code and get 15% off any product. All you have to do is put InfoGo in at checkout. That's InfoGo at oldglory.com. You can find the link in the show notes.
Are you too hot at night? Well, say hello to the world's softest sheets. Cozy Earth's bamboo sheet set keeps you cool, dry, and comfy all night long. It's made from bamboo. They're moisture wicking, breathable, and get even softer with every wash. Did you even know that you can make sheets out of bamboo? I didn't. I thought that was awesome. And they have pajama sets. Pure cozy elegance, stylish, silky, praised on Good Morning America and in style, and backed by thousands of five-star reviews. You can't beat the 100-night sleep trial and free shipping on over $50 plus a 10-year warranty for sheets. 41% off any product with code INFOGO at CozyEarth.com. Make sure you find the link in the show notes.
So now that we're back, we're going to kind of just give a brief overview of how insulin really works. It's produced by the pancreas, beta cells. Um, Signals cells to absorb glucose, regulates blood sugar, and types of insulins today, as we've already mentioned, you have rapid acting, short acting, intermediate, long acting, and ultra long acting. And then you have modern delivery systems. You have injections, insulin pens, pumps, and emerging inhaler forms. Uh, but insulin doesn't cure diabetes. It just keeps people alive and functioning. And it should be accessible to everyone that
Agreed.
has diabetes.
Agreed. And not without costing an arm and a leg.
We're going to get into a lot of the cost. I don't know if it's in part one or part two, but we're definitely going to get into the cost and what you can do.
Right. And so let's dive into the evolution of insulin production. So after its discovery in 1921, like we talked about, it was extracted from the pancreases of cows or pigs, and these animal-derived insulins were life-saving but not identical to human insulin, which sometimes caused allergic reactions or injection site irritation. So, production was labor intensive. Pancreas from slaughtered animals had to be processed carefully to extract usable insulin. And despite limitations, animal insulin kept millions alive for decades, transforming diabetes from a fatal disease to a manageable chronic condition.
Yeah, so honestly and truly, before, I mean, in 1921, what Kat's saying is it really came from the animals, and it wasn't really, what is the word I'm looking for? Like if you pick up a Coke, consistent, it wasn't really consistent either. So, but it did keep people alive. But the real breakthrough came in 1978 with recombinant DNA technology. This was a revolutionary change that occurred. The technology. Scientists were now able to produce synthetic insulin in bacteria or E. coli. And this approach involved inserting the human insulin gene into bacteria DNA, which allowed the bacteria to produce insulin that was identical to that human pancreas is made. And in 1982, the first commercial synthetic insulin hit the market, and it was Humulin, and it became available in 1982. So there you go, little fun factoid.
Factoid. And so, what was the benefits of synthetic insulin? Well, you had fewer allergic reactions compared to animal-derived insulin, scalable production, which factories could produce insulin on demand without relying on slaughterhouses, and you had a more consistent potency and purity, marking a turning point where insulin became a standardized, reliable medicine for millions worldwide.
Modern innovations like insulin analogs, these are engineered versions of insulin that act faster, slower, or more predictable than natural insulin.
And rapid-acting and long-acting insulins allow people to mimic natural insulin patterns more closely, improving glucose control.
Now you have the hybrid closed loop systems. And this is really the artificial pancreas. And this combines continuous glucose monitoring with insulin pumps to automatically regulate blood sugar. And this really reduces the daily burden on patients. But does it really? I mean, you still have to wear the pump,
Yeah, but they're small. I mean, you just have to make sure that it doesn't
run
break.
out and run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then there's ongoing research with inhalable insulin, which is ultra long acting formulations, and smart insulin patches that respond to blood sugar levels.
Well, I never heard of the smart insulin patches.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No, but that's pretty neat, though.
I guess really to wrap this section up, the shift from animal-derived insulin to synthetic engineered insulin, it really revolutionized diabetes management. It made treatment safer, it was more precise and widely available. It was a leap from a miracle drug to modern technology and advanced therapy. I mean, think about that. You had to before the 1980s, you had to rely on slaughterhouses for pancreases to be able to get insulin. You could have an allergic reaction. This batch you might have done fine with, the second batch, maybe not so much. Like just not being consistent at all. I mean, I get it saved millions of lives, but we can't stress enough the revolutionary that the technology of modern insulin's brought about.
In the early 1930s, a child diagnosed with type 1 diabetes faced a death sentence before insulin therapy became available. Before insulin's discovery, survival beyond a few months was nearly impossible, and early insulin therapy transformed the outlook. Children once expected to die could now live into adulthood, and families and doctors described insulin as a miracle drug, offering hope and a second chance at life.
But because there's always a but. In the US today, many people with type 1 diabetes face skyrocketing insulin prices. And some people are forced to ration doses or choose between insulin and essentials like food or rent. And this really highlights deep inequalities in healthcare access and affordability within a wealthy nation. So, the life-saving discovery of insulin, it really contrasts sharply with modern affordability crisis.
Right. And in a global perspective, in low and middle income countries, access to insulin is often unreliable or unaffordable. And many depend on donation programs or informal black market sources.
Could
And
you
so then
imagine trying to get your insulin off a black market?
I couldn't imagine trusting insulin on the black market,
Yeah, no, I couldn't either. And then donation programs, we know that those are not very consistent or very dependable.
hoping for the best.
What is that called? A wish and a prayer?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Then you have the lack of refrigeration, supply chain issues, and cost barriers that lead to preventable deaths, which
Pre
is really sad.
yeah, preventable deaths.
And that demonstrates that global insulin access remains a humanitarian issue nearly a century after its discovery.
I could not imagine, do I need to get this life-saving drug or do I need to buy food or do I need to have a place to live? Like they're all essential for life.
Right.
But let's get into the emotional, social, and financial impact. Daily management burden because insulin requires consistent vigilance, frequent blood sugar checks, sometimes using continuous glucose monitors, and then you got a careful carbohydrate counting and insulin dosing at every meal. And then just the ongoing adjustment to the stress, illness, and activity levels.
Then, of course, there's the fear and anxiety, which the persistent worry about hypoglycemia or low blood sugar, or hyperglycemia, which is high blood sugar. And then the social anxiety when managing injections or glucose monitoring in public or at work. Then there's emotional fatigue from the relentless nature of the disease.
And then the financial strain, high insulin cost and insurance barriers, they create major stress for patients and families. Expenses extend far beyond insulin. You have supplies like test strips, pumps, sensors, and they just add to the cost. And all of this brings financial pressure, and it can really negatively affect diet, lifestyle, and mental health. Just think about that. You're stressed out all the time trying to figure out, can I afford the insulin? Can I afford the supplies? And then
It's crazy. And, insulin is a life sustaining medication, it's not optional. Missing even one dose can cause severe complications or even death.
ensuring access, affordability, and reliable supply, it's essential not just for comfort, but for survival for someone with diabetes.
Right.
So, why are insulin prices so high in the United States?
Well, prices have risen dramatically over the past few decades. Even people with insurance can face hundreds of dollars per month in out of pocket costs. Manufacturers keep older insulin products on patent, limiting generic competition.
Yeah, think about that. Like, they have these patents and they won't allow generics to be able to be competitive with them. Think about it as like, when you have Coke and then you have Big K, or I know Big K is no longer around, but you know, yeah, the Big K doesn't really taste the same, but it does the same thing. It gives you that sugary rush, right?
Something like that.
But for like a third of the cost, think of how life-changing that could be to someone with diabetes.
Right. And then, of course, there are monopolies where a few companies dominate the insulin market, reducing price competition. And then the healthcare complexity of it all, middlemen like pharmacy benefit managers, which negotiate rebates, which can ironically inflate costs for patients. And then you have insurance coverage gaps where deductibles, copays, and tiered formularies can make insulin prohibitively expensive. So why can't millions in low and middle income countries access insulin consistently?
Well, because in many of these low and middle income countries, they face supply chain issues. They have limited healthcare infrastructure, high prices relative to income. So, in other words, their income doesn't really match what the insulin prices are. Some countries really deeply rely on donations or sporadic shipments, and this really creates dangerous gaps in availability. Then you have the lack of refrigeration, the lack of transportation, and this really challenges it makes storage and distribution difficult in rural areas. But I have
Mm.
another question for you, Kat. What factors contribute to high insulin costs globally?
Well, patents and intellectual property laws prevent local production of cheaper insulin in some countries. That limited competition. Only a few multinational companies dominate production and distribution. And healthcare infrastructure. Even when insulin is available, access may be restricted by clinics, trained personnel, or monitoring equipment. So, economic inequality, the cost relative to average income can make insulin unaffordable even if the price seems low by US standards.
Even 100 years after its discovery, insulin remains a life-saving medication that many cannot afford or it doesn't have reliable access to.
Mm, that's
And that is just sad within itself.
agreed. That's terrible.
Yeah. Scientific and future frontiers. There's fast acting, smarter insulins. Researchers are creating ultra rapid insulin formulations that begin working within minutes, more closely matching the body's natural insulin response after meals. Then you have smart insulin technologies, and these are being engineered to activate only when blood sugar levels rise, automatically regulating glucose and minimizing the risk of hyperglycemia.
Hmm. Well, and with these innovations, they aim to make insulin therapy more precise, predictable, and user friendly, reducing the need for constant monitoring and complex dosing decisions.
But it'll
But
still be out of reach for people that can't afford it.
right. But the ultimate goal is to lighten the daily burden of diabetes management while maintaining tighter blood sugar control. Of course, like to your point, if you can afford it.
Yeah, I mean, you got the needle sticks, you got the alcohol swabs. There's just a lot that goes with it.
And
You,
the test strips are outrageously expensive.
outrageously expensive. It shouldn't be a life choice. Do I buy food, rent, or electricity, or do I buy my supplies, to live? We're talking about here in the United States too. We're not just talking about all over the world. Yeah, countries out there where people are living and dying every day because they can't afford or get access to the supplies they need.
Right. It's just really sad.
Yes, absolutely.
So artificial pancreas systems, they integrate continuous glucose monitors with automated insulin pumps to simulate the natural function of a healthy pancreas.
And the way they work is they use advanced algorithms that analyze glucose trends and deliver insulin in real time, and they adjust doses automatically.
And some of those benefits include reduced human error in dosing, and more stable blood sugar levels throughout the day and night, and improved quality of life through fewer highs and lows.
Then you have those hybrid systems that currently available still require user input before meals, while fully automated systems, true, closed loop devices are advancing in clinical trials.
And there's gene therapy potential, where frontier research explores ways to reprogram or repair the body to produce its own insulin again. And some of the strategies include stimulating pancreatic beta cell regeneration or using stem cells or gene editing tools to create insulin producing cells.
Like CRISPR.
CRISPR. I could not.
It's all good.
I could not.
But potential outcome, which is long term or even permanent cure, reducing or eliminating the need for external insulin. And this stem cell technology, it might be a possibility. I mean, the possibilities are unknown, or, we just don't know that yet. As of now, diabetes has no cure.
None.
The major challenge still remains, including immune and rejection, safety, and ensuring precise insulin regulation inside the body.
Right. And scientists are driving progress toward a future where insulin management is easier, safer, and more affordable. From faster acting formulations to automated and biological solutions, the next generation of diabetes care aims to make living with diabetes simpler and more effective than ever before.
Let's kind of get into some societal reflections here and health equity. The medical triumph of the 1920, where it revolutionized diabetes treatment, turning once fatal disease into something that's a manageable chronic condition, right?
hmm Marked one of the first successful hormone therapies in medical history. It represented a breakthrough in understanding human metabolism and the endocrine system.
But it saved millions of lives worldwide, giving patients a chance at a normal life expectancy. And
Mhm.
this became a cornerstone of modern endocrinology, influencing research in other hormonal and metabolic disorders.
And over a century later, insulin remains out of reach for many who need it most. In wealthy nations, insulin is widely available and technologically advanced. You have pumps, pens, and CGMs. Yet, high prices and insurance challenges can still place a heavy financial burden on patients.
Yeah, and in developing countries, millions face limited or irregular supply, often depending on donations, imports, or the black market. And high relative cost, poor healthcare infrastructure, and lack of refrigeration really make insulin unreliable.
Mhm. But the situation underscores a global divide where a drug that sustains life for someone is a luxury or a scarcity for others.
So, honestly and truly, this really raises some moral issues here. Should insulin be a human right rather than a commercial product?
It should, and
Eh,
it sparks debate over ethics of profit from essential life-saving medicines.
But it highlights the responsibility of governments, healthcare systems, pharmaceutical companies to ensure adequate access.
And it connects to broader discussions about healthcare as a social justice issue, not merely a market commodity.
Access to a life-saving medication like insulin really reflects deeper societal inequalities, inequities.
And
Are
I mean, you did fine.
Yeah, okay. We'll just leave it at that.
So the discovery alone was a triumph of science, but without fair distribution, its benefits really remain uneven. So true progress requires both scientific innovation and global health equity.
So before we end, Kat and I kind of wanted to break it down. We wanted to kind of put in perspective, and these are US numbers, the price of insulin without insurance or uninsured cash paid. So major insulin manufacturers do offer programs to cap cost at $35 or less per month, like Lilly Insulin Value Program. You can visit their website.
And retail list prices remain really high. A Humalog Quick Pen can cost over $140 per pen without insurance. And each of those pens only have 3 milliliters of insulin in them.
The average list price for a 30-day supply of insulin across brands was about $499.
hmm And
That's $500 a month. Like, no wonder people are saying, should I pay rent? Should I buy food, electricity, or do I need to get this life-saving drug?
right. I mean, that's a whole car payment, that's a whole bill by
Yeah,
itself.
absolutely.
Then you have assistance programs, coupons, and patient aid options, which can significantly reduce the price, in some cases to free or even under $35 a month for eligible individuals.
Yeah, and you really need to look at the manufacturer that you're looking at or get with your doctor. Some cases they can help you. But with insurance, so commercial insurance, Medicare, whatever plan you may have, Medicare, Part D or Part B, out-of-pocket cost is capped at $35 per month. It's only on the covered insulin products.
Right. The covered, what they cover for insulin.
Yeah,
Not
and
all insulin is equal.
and some require what is called a prior authorization to get with your doctor before they will cover something that's not would normally in their formulary.
Right. And then there's private insurance where costs vary widely by plan and deductible. And average annual out of pocket cost for insulin is about $613 a year for people under the age of 65. And in 2018, over 25% of privately insured patients paid more than $35 a month for insulin.
So, total diabetes management expenses. We just talked about insulin, but you have supplies, you have care, and all of this can add up and exceed to over $4,800 a year. And this is even with insurance.
And so the key takeaways here really are list prices for insulin are high, but actual out of pocket costs depend on insurance, assistance programs, and manufacturer discount.
Uninsured individuals can often access insulin for $35 a month or less through manufacturer programs or pharmacy discounts, can sometimes access.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
So Medicare beneficiaries benefit from a federal $35 a month cap, but some privately insured patients still pay much more.
So even when insulin itself is affordable, you have those other diabetes care costs, supplies, sensors, appointments. All that can really add up.
Significantly.
Yes.
And in conclusion, here, insulin saved millions, yet challenges remain in access, affordability, and management. And insulin is more than a hormone, it's a lifeline, a story of innovation, and a mirror reflecting our society's values.
Part one of a part two series. We're going to follow this up with GLP-1s.
Should insulin be a human right rather than a commercial product?
That's our final reflection. And with that, Kat, I say we end part one and hope you join us for part two, GLP-1s, which kind of follows up with insulins.
Absolutely. If you would like to support this podcast, tell a friend and help get the word out.
If you would like to help us keep the show going, you could do so at Patreon. You can find the link in the show notes.
And as always, William and I want to thank you for listening, whether you're new here or have been with us for a while.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Join the Facebook group at Info on the Go
Over there, you can share with us your show ideas.
or ask us a question.
Make sure you hit subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcast.
Send us a text using the link in the show notes or leave a review.
It really does help others find us. But you can also email us at
infoonthegopodcast@gmail.com.
you can find that link in the show notes. And yes, it is all one word. Till next time.
Stay curious.